Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh shoot! Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Infosode 7. We'll be going over Pam Bondi, uh, a new ATF policy that that they will be going. Um, yeah, so just be well informed. Thank you for all my agents of info out there. We are here to gather some info. We're going to go over, let's just jump right into it. We're going to take a quick 15 to 20-second break, then we will be right on it. Uh, and ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that mishap. Some futures for later episodes in the future. Just testing out, finding out some new stuff. But yeah. So this is going to be Pam Bondi getting some new directives, or I guess you could say policy for the ATF. And so what we're going to do is just go over a couple of YouTube videos. Now, as usual, this is Be Well Informed, so we gather data from anywhere possible. Whoever has the info, we're going to grab it and seeing what we get from it and come up with our conclusions on said data or theories or whatever else may be. So we will be having the infosode for this particular episode. So without further ado, we're going to check out that infosode real quick before we jump to the videos. Um, Actually, before we jump to the infosode, let's go over some of the YouTube channels that we will be uh, watching for this particular um, infosode. We'll be going over the Four Boxes Diner, having news on Pam Bondi. Um, Going over news with Pam Bondi, new ATF policy. We would then be shifting to uh, ARFCOM, ARFCOM news, going over machine guns because of a new case, I believe, and Pam Bondi and the new ATF rules, I would assume, there. And we'll also be watching um, Cooper Jacket, Copper Jacket TV, Cooper, about Trump signing the new massive executive orders. And go with Mr. Cooper. But yeah, that's it. So let's jump right into the and check out this infosode. This one is not going to be too crazy. Now, if you want to check out the infosode, the link is in the description. The infosode pretty much contains the information for the particular topic and stories in the video, or just an infosode outside of a video. But within those infosodes, we'll have theories about the story, what we gathered from the stories, just our quick summary of what we thought of the stories and future updates and things of that nature. So the site is bewellin.com. You can follow along. Again, that's BEWELLIN.com. You can go there and check out the infosode. We are on infosode 7. So that would be / infosode 7_0 after the website address. And there you can see we'll have the infosode where we will have the the links to the YouTube videos that we have, and we'll be having a box in there with our. I'll go up here, which shows you what they each do. The information, the gathered information from the story. So the information we gather, a quick summary of that information, theories, opinions about the story. Most stories won't have these, but and random information related to connect the story. So other stories similar, things of that nature. We mainly only have stuff in the first tab. The other two tabs are just follow-ups or things of that nature that we may find along the way. But these can be updated as the video goes along. Again, not every Infosode will have a particular page for it at the moment, but eventually they all will. But anyways, without further ado, let's jump right into it. We're going to look at the first video and see what he's talking about when they're going over Pam Bondi and such.
Major breaking news. Attorney General Pam Bondi, on behalf of President Donald Trump, has issued her first pro-Second Amendment ruling, her first pro-Second Amendment position. It may not be obviously the case that this is pro-Second Amendment. We're going to break down this critical memorandum that was just sent to the entire Department of Justice that speaks to, among other things, the future role of the ATF. Let's get into it now. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and I'm proud to say the winner of the 2025 Gun News Award in the category of Top Voice of the Second Amendment in America. Thank you so much for your support. I hope to continue to earn your trust this year, the year of our Lord, 2025. All right, folks, we have major breaking news here. Out of the Department of Justice, new Attorney General Pam Bondi has just issued a several-page memorandum. I have a copy of it here, dated February 5th, 2025, on behalf of the Office of the Attorney General. She has outlined a series of priorities and changes to personnel and objectives and strategies with respect to the entire Department of Justice. There is an entire paragraph here that speaks to the ATF that is quite favorable, but it may not be obviously favorable until I point out why this is happening. And to understand why she's doing what she's doing with the ATF, we're going to have to go back to the first Donald Trump term in 2017 through 2021 to talk about a game that the ATF was supposedly playing, and how this order, this, if you want to call it this memorandum, this directive by Attorney General Bondi, is going to eliminate the possibility of games by the ATF that we saw in the first Trump administration. To begin with, what I'm going to do is talk briefly about what this memo says. Then I'm going to go back to the first Trump administration, to the first Trump term, and talk about what the ATF was doing to play games with their Second Amendment rights, and how this memorandum by Attorney General Bondi is nipping that in the bud in a very strategic way. The lawyering on behalf of this Trump administration is far superior to anything we saw in the first term, in my view.
Get matched today.
So while that's going through its hard times with the ads, so what we gathered so far is that, oh, excuse me. So yeah, it's looking at their wanting to reorganize and with personnel and things of that nature. And Pam Bondi is getting that done at the moment. So I'm trying to see if this ad is over with, and it is. All right.
Hearing the professionals, the expertise that Donald Trump is bringing to bear, this term is going to be tremendously superior than what we saw in the first 4 years for a whole bunch of reasons. And it's going to be these kinds of nuanced things involving the ATF that's going to make a big difference. And then there's a lot more to come. That I can assure you. Okay, so to begin with, this is the memorandum that Attorney General Pam Bondi issued. Before we get to the specific ATF issue, this is what she writes at the start of the memo that touches on the ATF. The Department of Justice is the only federal agency with a name that includes a moral imperative to do justice. Pursuant to that mission, prosecutors are tasked with protecting the public, enforcing the law in a fair and consistent fashion, and conducting themselves in a manner that promotes respect for the legal system and the rule of law. These tasks require the exercise of discretion However, prosecutorial discretion is bounded by the Constitution, statutes, and case law, state and local ethical requirements, and policy decisions set forth by the President of the United States. So that sets up the memo. Then she goes on to talk about a whole host of items, including where she wants prosecutors and federal law enforcement to focus their attention. And that includes, first and foremost, and correctly so, on immigration enforcement, as well as human trafficking and smuggling, which is part of immigration enforcement as I see it. Also, transitional organized crime, cartels, and gangs. Again, this is all part of a focus on immigration. If you remember a couple weeks ago, I pointed out that the ATF was going to be largely repurposed in many respects to immigration, and you can see where this is going already. Then she goes on to also identify a couple other values that she wants to pursue. One is protecting law enforcement personnel and also shifting resources in the National Securities Division. Then she specifically, and this is what's key about the ATF, she specifically talks about shifting ATF resources. Now, I'm going to read this to you and then we're going to talk about it, because some people think this is kind of an anti-Second Amendment issue. It's not. It's pro-Second Amendment, and you'll see why in just a couple minutes. But first of all, let's go through what Attorney General Pam Bondi wrote in her memo about ATF and its allocation of resources. Here's what she wrote in her memo. Shifting ATF.
Now, before we go any further, this is a 17-minute video, so I'm not going to play all of this video. We're probably just going to get this portion of it right here to see what the new it says shifting ATF resources. So see what they're discussing here and see if there's anything shortly after it. Then we might skip forward a little bit and we'll take our information from this just because I don't want to play this whole video.
ATF resources. To free resources.
Again, if you want to check out this video, the link will be in the B-Well info Infosode for all the information.
To address more pressing priorities, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, shall shift resources, listen carefully, folks, shall shift resources from its alcohol and tobacco enforcement programs to focus on matters relating to other priorities set forth herein, which, as I've articulated, will be things like immigration enforcement. Now listen carefully. She goes on in this paragraph about ATF resources. No resources shall be diverted from the ATF's regulatory responsibilities, such as federal firearms licenses or background checks. Let me read that to you again. No resources shall be diverted from the ATF's regulatory responsibilities, such as federal firearms licenses and background checks. All right. Now, some people have said that language, that distinction between alcohol and tobacco enforcement versus ATF's firearms regulatory responsibilities is somehow scary and bad for the Second Amendment. That this is somehow suggesting that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, doesn't care about enforcing laws involving alcohol and tobacco, and those people are just going to be sent off to enforce immigration laws, but those people dealing with ATF firearms-related activities will continue on as if nothing has changed. And they point to that language that says that no resources shall be diverted from the ATF's regulatory responsibilities, such as, which means, for example, not exclusively, for example, federal firearms licenses and background checks. Now, let me tell you why this is very good for the Second Amendment. This requires some nuance and some understanding of some games that ATF folks were playing in the first 4 years of Donald Trump's administration when he first took office back in 2017. Now, to understand what they were doing, I want to remind you of a policy that Donald Trump put into effect in 2017, almost at the very beginning. In January 30th of 2017, in his first term, Donald Trump signed an executive order called the 2-for-1 order. The 2-for-1 order. Now, what does that mean? Back then, the order was that every single regulation that the government was going to issue, they could issue a regulation. However, if they were going to issue a new regulation, the government agency issuing that regulation had a duty, an obligation under this executive order by President Trump to eliminate 2 old regulations. The idea being that there was too many regulations, and before someone in the administrative agency like the ATF could issue a new regulation, they had to get rid of 2 regulations. Political rights back then in 2017, Trump signs executive order requiring that for every 1 new regulation, 2 must be revoked. Goes on to say that President Donald Trump signed an executive order Monday morning requiring that for every new regulation, every new federal regulation to be implemented, 2 must be rescinded. Then Donald Trump was quoted as saying, "This will be the biggest such act that our country has ever seen. We will basically situate it so you can open your business and expand your business very easily, and that's what our country has been about." He also goes on to talk about how it goes far beyond that. We're cutting regulations massively. Listen carefully. We're cutting regulations massively for small business and for large businesses. Small businesses have been treated very, very badly. Okay, so obviously, when Donald Trump did that, if you want to issue a regulation.
So what I'm getting so far is Pam Bondi making sure the focus of the ATF is on their original duties, and he's explaining to people, hey, it's not just on firearm enforcement. There's still and licensing and stuff. It's also going to be the other stuff. It's just that they were just using that as an example, as the wording such as suggests. But anyways, now he's going into some stuff that I'm not so sure I have a good grasp on yet. So I'm just going to listen to see what he's talking about.
ATF, you got to remove 2. That was obviously about deregulating the economy, about making it easier to do business, easier to open up gun stores, easier to get licenses, and so on. That is clearly the intent. It was a clear intent of Donald Trump. So what did the ATF do back in 2017? Well, if you talk to anyone in the industry, they will tell you that the ATF and other agencies were engaged in, so I understand from talking to people in the industry, malicious compliance. The notion of malicious compliance. What is malicious compliance? It's where government agents, doesn't have to be government, by the way, it could be employees, but government agents comply with a directive from the President of the United States, but they do it in such a way that is absurd and doesn't focus on and expand the goal of the intent or the goal of the regulation or the directive by the president. So obviously it's pretty clear what Donald Trump is doing in January 2017, which is he wanted to deregulate, get rid of government, make government easier to work with from the point of view of being a business or a human individual with freedom. What the ATF and other agencies started to do, though, for example, is in the normal course, if lawyers, let's say, for the FFLs, the gun industry or gun owners or gun shop owners, whatever it was, if they had a question of the ATF about a point, or they wrote a letter to the ATF and says, hey, you know, I got this new gun. I'm trying to debate, is this a machine gun? Is it not a machine gun? Is it a short barrel rifle? Is it not a short barrel rifle? You know, is it a silencer? Is it not a, you know, there's a lot of these kinds of day-to-day questions that go on where gun companies, gun shops, FFLs have questions for the ATF.
Carrying around extra
Oh, no,
fat
you
is
don't, baby.
dangerous.
Let's go. Oh. No, we caught that early, people. Caught that early, folks. So it seems like the ATF was playing some sneaky, linky games to where they had a directive, they had the mandates in 2017, but that was more so, like he's saying, to make sure people had the ability to, you know, starting their businesses and growing their businesses easier and expanding or whatnot. And the ATF, you know, that means they got to follow the same laws, obviously, but not just the ATF, but other departments as well. But since we're on the ATF, what I'm guessing is going to say is they would create a new law, but cut 2 old laws that are actually beneficial towards the actual policy of the of what the ATF was meant to do, and against, like, you know, the civilian in the sense of the business or in the civil rights just wanting to own a particular weapon. So I'm guessing it's where they created a new law, but they cut 2 others that were, you know, against the will of the people in a sense, or whatever, right? It should be over by now.
Make sure I'm doing the bound book correctly, but I don't understand, how do I do it here? You see what I'm saying? So what was happening was this. The ATF inspectors and agents and other people in the agency would do things like this. Oh, well, thank you for your letter asking for clarification and guidance about your new gun or your new product, your new accessory, whatever it is. But unfortunately, we're not in a position to answer your letter because we at the ATF view answering your letter, responding to your letter as a regulation. And we cannot issue new regulations. See what I'm saying? See where this is going? We cannot respond by issuing new regulations, which means we can't write you a letter back or give you guidance on a bump stock or give you guidance on a gun or give you guidance on a potential suppressor or any of these things, because we at the ATF view such an act of responding to your inquiry, of answering your question, to be a new regulation, and we can't do that unless we eliminate 2 other regulations, which we're not in a position to do right now. So we're not going to answer your question. We're not going to write you a letter back giving you guidance or clarification. And if we're inspectors talking to FFLs or gun shops, we're not going to answer questions even though if we know the answer, because we interpret that responsiveness to the industry, to gun owners, to the Second Amendment community as a form of regulation. And under the Donald Trump, we can't issue a new regulation until we take away 2 regulations. And since we can't take away 2 regulations, we can't answer your question because we view that as giving forth or setting forth a new regulation, which we can't do unless we eliminate the 2. So you see how that game got played. So as it turns out, that 2-to-1 regulatory issue that Donald Trump is doing to help American businesses, to help gun companies, to help Americans, was really undercut by a form of malicious compliance by deep state, by bureaucrats, by folks at the ATF and the like. So with that said, and with that background in mind, if you look at what Attorney General Bondi wrote in this memo, it makes a lot more sense, because she's saying, yeah, the alcohol and tobacco enforcement programs, you're going to be deployed to the immigration stuff. But, and listen carefully to what she wrote and what I just said, no resources shall be diverted from the ATF's regulatory responsibilities. Notice how she uses the phrase regulatory responsibilities. She doesn't say enforcement programs. She doesn't say criminal enforcement. She doesn't say law enforcement activities. She says the ATF's regulatory responsibilities, such as federal firearms licenses and background checks, because she knows from the prior experience of the Trump administration that if you didn't tell the ATF's FFL-related people, the compliance-related people, the people that touch fingers with everything from background checks to NFA items to responding to questions from gun dealers and manufacturers and the like, then they would do that malicious compliance game that they did in the first Trump 4 years. The best example of which is, again, that, how they manipulated that 2-to-1 rule that should have been.
Well, people, I said I wasn't going to watch the whole video, but we're close to it, so we're going to stop there. So hopefully doesn't get angered at me for playing that much. We won't do that in the future, folks. We'll probably pick shorter videos and or skim through them next time, but we'll see. Anyways, let's catch this next one. So what he's saying was ATF was being slick. They were, it wasn't exactly in the way I was expecting it to be doing it, but nonetheless, they found a way to make life difficult, so to say. I just want to catch this next one and see what what they have to say on the issue. Well, at least it's no sound.
Well, hello, and thanks for watching another episode of ARFCOM News, your twice-weekly dose of the finest 2A propaganda. The big giant news earlier this week was a federal judge ruled federal restrictions on machine guns are unconstitutional.
Stop.
The part some people weren't saying quite as loud, though, was as applied to the particular appellant in this case. That means it really has no immediate profound effect on us. That's not to say this case doesn't matter, though. U.S. District Judge Carlton Reeves, an Obama appointee, I am Jack's complete lack of surprise, openly criticized Supreme Court gun rights rulings in his opinion, saying the Heller, McDonald, and Bruen decisions did not trust that local and state lawmakers had protected their citizens' Second Amendment rights or would protect them going forward.
Indeed.
Yeah. You see, that's only because those lawmakers did not protect our rights and have instead passed numerous laws which blatantly defy the Second Amendment. But he did grudgingly admit the Bruen precedent forces him to find the federal government's prohibition on owning an unregistered machine gun is unconstitutional. Now, the guy who appealed his conviction filed the appeal as applied, so this ruling only applies to him, but as Justice Reeves noted, the Fifth Circuit has held that cases like this are needed to determine the contours of acceptable prosecutions through the resolution of continual as-applied challenges.
What is that, Old English?
Hey, you gotta hand it to the guy for following the law despite his personal prejudices, though. What do you think? But you know, it would be impossible for us to produce quality 2A propaganda without sponsors. So let's pay some bills. Today's video
Yeah, I know we can't show that stuff.
Who names these things anyway?
They are explicitly enforcement telecommunications system, or CLETS.
Who names these things anyway?
They are explicitly prohibited from using it to check concealed carry permit applicants, but they got caught doing it about 7,000 times in 2023. What's more, deputies are generally not even disciplined for breaking the law. They just get more training. Other officers who misused the system did get at least some punishment, like, for example, a Reading cop who got fired after he used it to get his fiance's ex's car impounded.
These things happen.
But he just got hired by another department anyway. The EFF notes there are several database systems available to Kalistani cops, but CLETS is the only one with mandatory reporting for abuse, so it's likely there's actually a lot more misuse going on with the other systems. Pam Bondi is a turbo fart sack, but there's not much we can really do about it now. We never really had much chance of stopping her nomination as AG, really. She's been joined at the hip with Trump since his first term, where her influence can largely be blamed for his take the guns first position. And she obviously still has his attention. So we can kiss any hopes of Trump directing his attorney general to sue states for draconian laws goodbye. In fact, Pam Bondi is such a turbo fart sack, I just found out she pulled funding from the alcohol and tobacco portions of the ATF so they'd have more available to infringe on us with. The most we can realistically hope for is she doesn't send the ATF on a holy war.
But the most we can hope for is to get you buried in secrecy so your grave don't get violated.
I mean, obviously, if the other team won, the best case scenario would be a continuation of the Inquisition, which
He's saying something separate. He's saying that the order that she gave did not help. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have definitely further infosodes for this one to dig deep to see what the truth is, to see what the real one would be. So we're probably going to have to figure out a way to put some kind of, we're going to put a symbol. All right, here we go. Agents of Info. We have our first mission and duty. All right, let's bring up the, yeah. All right, cool. Ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to have to figure this out. So we don't have it yet. We're going to have a section up here that's going to have some kind of war zone, battle zone. We're going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. This is a battle zone infosode because we got two different things going on, and I don't know which one is true, which one is false. So we're going to have to put this in the category that we don't have yet. We'll figure it out, ladies and gentlemen. But in Infosode 7, we got some fireworks. We got some fireworks, ladies and gentlemen. Let's keep going for a little bit further. Let's see what's going on. Oh.
made by customers. But there is a real strong possibility that she gets it in her head that she needs to crusade against home squirting or binary triggers or who knows. There's just no telling what wacky stuff she might get in her head. Because you never really know what boogeyman will get the control freak's attention next. Apparently, F Troop is really freaked out about police departments selling off guns now. And for once, I agree with the ATF.
What in the actual?
Police departments should not sell their guns directly to the public. Instead, they should give them away to low-income families. In all seriousness, it is more or less standard practice for police departments to trade in their old guns for credit when replacing duty guns.
And so, just like the last one, we don't watch the other. This one's a little shorter, so we're halfway through. So we do have a discrepancy here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to have to figure out what the actual deal is with the Pam Bondi and ATF. Let's get to the last story. We got 3 left, people. But maybe we might figure it out in this one. Let's check. Again, these videos will be available on the bewellin.com. Not available, but the links will be there. And the links will be in the description down below.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Copper Jacket TV. So a little bit of a late video for me today, but we...
Oh, jeez. I guess with this system, even if you pause it, you push play, it goes back to the ad. It's a little... I don't know why it does that, but... Yeah, so, again, it seems there's a conflict of knowing between the new directive when it comes to when such as licensing and firearms and whatnot. It seems that there seems to be a discrepancy whether she was meaning to be like taking focus away or not, or if it's going to be bad for gun owners. So that seems to be a discrepancy.
This is probably
so far.
The biggest Second Amendment news that I have given you guys in the past
see what
4 or 5 years.
Copper Jacket
President
TV got
Trump
to say,
just
not
signed
Mr. Cooper.
An executive order protecting the Second Amendment. And one of the things that he did in this executive order is he is basically telling the Department of Justice to back off existing lawsuits that are challenging things like the FRT and braces and all that stuff. It is a massive executive order, so let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, so let's just go ahead and dive right into this executive order, and we'll talk about all the different things that he did here. There's far too much for me to be able to memorize, so let me go ahead and pop it up on the screen. Okay, so you can see here it says Protecting Second Amendment Rights, Executive Order dated February 7th, 2025. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1, Purpose. The Second Amendment is an indispensable safeguard of security and liberty. It has preserved the right of the American people to protect ourselves, our families, and our freedoms since the founding of our great nation. Because it is foundational to maintaining all other rights held by Americans, the right to keep and bear arms must not be infringed. Section 2, Plan of Action. Within 30 days of the date of this order, the Attorney General, which is now Pam Bondi, shall examine all orders, regulations, guidance plans, international agreements, which is great, that's the UN, and other actions of executive departments and agencies to assess any ongoing infringements of the Second Amendment rights of our citizens and present a proposed plan of action to the President through the Domestic Policy Advisor to protect the Second Amendment rights of all Americans. B, in developing such proposed plan of action, the Attorney General shall review at a minimum 1. All presidential and agency actions from January of 2021 through January of 2025 that purport to promote safety but may have impinged on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. So anything from maybe the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act or other orders that have infringed on our constitutional rights, they're going to have to take a look at that. So even if it says that it's for safety, it's now up for review. 2, rules promulgated by the Department of Justice, including the ATF, from January 2021 through January 2025, pertaining to firearms and federal firearms licensees. So this is where they're going to go over all of those agency actions. So all of the rules that the ATF has come up with over the past 4 or 5 years, they're going to have to take a look at those now and possibly overturn them. So that right there is a huge one. Number 3, agencies, plans, orders, and actions regarding the so-called enhanced regulatory enforcement policy pertaining to firearms and or federal firearms licensees. So the zero tolerance policy, it sounds like that's going to be pretty much out too. Number 4, reports and related documents issued by the White House office.
So, a quick break. What do you all think so far? I mean, what it sounds like to me, so the first story was going over how he was trying to say the Pam Bondi orders that it's not what y'all seen. That's why she used words such as an example, as not only these, but such as these, the original purpose of the ATF. Now, the second one was more along the lines of it's pandemonium about to happen. It's going to not be good for, you know, in the end, it's not going to be good. This one we got pretty much not really talking about in particular Pam Bondi, but talking about what the president signed. And going off of that, it seems what's going on is, and looking at the wording here, you can see what they're saying, the actual right here. So what this is saying, regardless of what Pam Bondi, the president signs here, is stating, go over any laws that infringe upon the American Citizen Second Amendment right. And it seems like in all aspects, from any department, from any legal aspect, any law that's in place that's going against, the Citizen Second Amendment ability, we want those pretty much out and gone. So it seems like to me, in the end, no matter what, folks, at least for this, it seems like the second video we watched from Copper Jacket TV might be on the wrong side of this, but I may be wrong myself because I'm not too good when it comes to law and firearms and things of that nature. I don't really pay attention to that much. I do check stuff out from Nora. How do I say that? I can't ever say that name right. So I do watch stuff here and there, but it's not my main thing. So, but yeah, I do know how to got some good aim. Nah, but anyways, let's go. I ain't the best, but we hit the target here and there when I'm at the range. I had to clarify that.
Of gun violence prevention. So they're going to go over all of those documents. Hopefully they just throw them in the paper shredder. Number 5, the position taken by the United States in any and all ongoing potential litigation that affects or could affect the ability of Americans to exercise their Second Amendment rights. That is the biggest one to me right there, because that means they're going to go over all of the lawsuits. So any ongoing or potential litigation, so, FRTs, things like that, they're going to go over all of that litigation, and possibly, hopefully, this means that they are going to withdraw from those. So maybe not.
And yeah, I think that's going to be it for this particular Infosode, folks. That again was the last video was from Copper Jacket TV. Again, check out the Infosode. You'll have all those in the description. So speaking of the Infosode, let's go on and head over to the Infosode. Now, again for this Infosode, I'm going to update it real quick with some slight info, just for some clarification for later, I guess you could say. So, gathered information from story. Let's see, shorten that up a little bit. Oh, nope, wrong thing. All right, folks. So we have it. We have the update. We pretty much just went with oh, we can still see it. We can still see it, ladies and gentlemen. So the new directive has been put up. So all we have for this infosode is what we have and what we know. The information we gathered is pretty much simple. Let's reload that up. And for further information, if you all do not know, these so here's what I gathered. New directive from Pam Bondi to ATF and where the focus should be. We'll need to verify. So we will have information on this later. And also, new orders will force all agencies and departments to seek and find any law that may infringe on the People's Second Amendment rights. I gotta do some spelling fixes, but other than that, ladies and gentlemen, that would be it for this particular info sode. This is Be Well Informed, all my agents of info. We're going to make the system better, going to be quicker, won't be having to have these long lags. We're still getting used to it, still building it, still working on it. But please, please do be on the lookout for the new Agents of Info platform that we're working on. We're going to have all the agents out there, have y'all out there gathering the info you need, when you need it, wherever you need it, however you need to get it. We'll get it to you. We'll have people out there for you to get it. Agents of Info, stay tuned. The platform's only going to get bigger and better. We got a lot of things in the works. But anyways, we're going to have another infosode for this one for sure because we got to verify. And that's it for now. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Be Well Informed. We are out.